This toolkit is by the Division for Inclusive Social Development of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs.
A very warm welcome to this National Actions Plan on Disability, a self-tutorial on the Toolkit on Disability. My name is Zuki Swanzo, a social entrepreneur from KZ Diversity and Inclusion Solutions in South Africa. I'm a disability inclusion consultant, a researcher, and currently pursuing a PhD on social governance at Waseda University in Tokyo, Japan. The objectives of this module is to provide participants with approaches to the preparation, the development, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of effective national actions plans to enhance economic and social inclusion of the rights of persons with disabilities, while highlighting the critical importance of the implementation. This module is therefore relevant to everyone who has an interest in disability or a responsibility for addressing issues of disability because of the nature of their work, including policymakers, public servants, representatives of disabled people's organizations, and civil society, amongst others. Upon completing this module, participants will have an understanding of the role National Actions Plan can play in advancing implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, as well as realizing inclusive development. They will also gain the knowledge of the general principles applicable to the development and implementation of Disability Inclusive National Actions Plan. They will also have the ability to identify the steps that are required for the preparation, development, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of National Actions Plan. So let us move on to the next slide for an overview of the contents of this module.
The module map consists of Part 1, the role in which national action plans can play in advancing the implementation of the UNCRPD. Part 2, general principles to the development and implementation of disability inclusive national action plans. Part 3, practical guidelines on the preparation, development, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of national action plans. Part 4, structure and content of disability national action plans. Part 5, summary and useful resources, guidelines, and examples of national action plans.
Part 1 of the module takes us through the role in which National Actions Plan can play in implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and realizing inclusive development. Let us take a look at the next slide.
National action plans are policy documents indicating the goals, activities, timelines, and resources needed to achieve specific development objectives. They can be invaluable tools for the advancement of disability inclusive development and the rights of persons with disabilities. Many countries have initiated or completed processes for developing their own national development or human rights plans or sector-specific plans consistent with the human rights obligations. In addition, some countries have adopted thematically focused plans, such as plans on the rights of persons with disabilities or women. The module focuses on disability-specific and disability-inclusive action plans, which provide opportunities for the government and other stakeholders to review a country's concerns in the concerns of disability, mainstream disability across all sectors and services, raise awareness of the social and development inclusive issues facing persons with disabilities among government officials, security authorities, civil society organizations, and the general public. Mobilize a broad spectrum of society to work on the rights of persons with disabilities, collectively and cooperatively. For example, targeting not only DPOs, but also mainstream civil society organizations, children's rights groups, women's organizations, development organizations, and others. propose activities that can be implemented to advance the rights of persons with disabilities and to ensure that the development activities are disability inclusive. Set achievable targets that can be implemented to advance the rights of persons with disabilities and to ensure that development activities are disability inclusive. Determine the necessary budgets and advocate for the need for funding for disability policies, as well as their actual implementation. Monitor and evaluate the extent to which existing approaches to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities are successful, and to adjust these approaches where they are not. Promote linkages and coordination with other national programs, particularly in the areas of development and education, and generate commitment to action amongst all stakeholders. Visit the link provided for examples of other national action plans. Now take a moment to reflect on your knowledge or awareness of available development action plans in your country. Are you aware of whether your country has a national action plan or program? Yes, no, or you don't know? Are you aware if your country has a national plan on disability? Yes, no, or you don't know? Are you aware if your country has any other sectoral plans, such as plans on education, older persons, the rights of children? Yes, no, or you don't know? Whichever of these answers you have selected above, let's proceed to peruse this interactive toolkit for possible insights from an international perspective.
In part 1, we have understood the role of national actions plans, the opportunity they provide for government and other stakeholders in realizing inclusive development. We've also seen that many countries have initiated and developed action plans, of which the examples have been highlighted in this section, along with further reading material that has been provided in this module pack. The next part provides guiding principles for the development of national action plans, which should be taken into account in preparing for the design and the implementation. Let's visit part 2 to learn more on this.
The design and implementation of a national action plan should involve all actors, from national, provincial, municipal, and local community levels, with a legitimate stake in the process. Such stakeholders may include government officials and parliamentarians, as well as persons with disabilities and their representative organizations who can contribute to the success of the disability initiatives. Care should be taken to ensure that participation reflects the diversity of disability and includes the voices of those who may face heightened levels of exclusion based on disability, coupled with other aspects of their identities. For example, gender, age, or indigenous or minority status. The active and meaningful participation of a wide, diverse, and representative group of relevant actors is consistent with both the general principles of the CRPD, which call for the full and effective participation and inclusion of persons with disabilities in all aspects of society, and the general obligations, which require state parties to closely consult with and actively involve DPOs in the development and implementation of decision-making processes concerning issues of relevant persons with disabilities. Moreover, participation promotes a shared sense of ownership, which in itself is critical to the success and sustainability of a national action plan. While we're still on general principles to the development of disability-inclusive plans, take a moment to watch the film and respond to questions that follow on inclusive participation.
Hi, Sister.
Hey, Blair.
No, and we just done setting up the venue, so the only thing that's left is for the document packs to arrive.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, I've also been calling everyone, including the stakeholders. Hey, I'm telling you, Pule, this is going to be such a big event. We're making history with this good practice. I just can't wait on implementation and monitoring.
Yeah.
You see, in that way, we'll be able to see what worked and what didn't. And then we can be able to apply corrective measures when necessary.
You see, Sister, everything is just going to work out just... I can feel it in my blood.
I can also feel it and I'm so excited.
Sister! Sister. Hi, hello. Thank you. Welcome. Take a seat. Thank you, sir. Hi, welcome, sir. Welcome. I'm sorry, man, but this first phase of the project is targeting only persons with disability.
And what makes you think that she's not part of the targeted audience?
The lady doesn't look like she's...
I actually had mental illness.
It's just that you don't look... Go ahead, I'm sorry. Please, you can have a seat. Sorry, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh, excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir?
I cannot use this. Don't you have it in Braille?
I'm sorry, sir. I'm really sorry, sir. I truly apologize.
Hey! Can somebody please come help me up these stairs? I'm on a wheelchair, for goodness sake.
Excuse me? Can you please go help the lady with the wheelchair, please?
Sure. Where is she?
Okay, it's fine. I'll figure something.
Excuse me, sir. Can you please just kindly assist me with the lady outside in the wheelchair?
Batung, so much for a disability inclusive session. I mean, really, is somebody gonna help me sometime this year? Hello, Batung. I need help.
Is there pork in this food?
Help!
Are you okay?
Okay.
Just have some water. Breathe.
Now that you've seen the film, what do you think Mrs. Dudu and her team missed as a crucial part of their planning? Please select the correct answer from the following. 1. Nothing. Unfortunately, they had difficult participants. 2. Request reasonable accommodation needs of all participants. 3. They just forgot to provide for Braille material. 4. They forgot to tell the wheelchair users to come with caregivers so they could help them up the stairs. 5. They did not serve any beverages. In response to the previous quiz, the active and meaningful participation of representative groups is consistent with the general principles of the CRPD, which calls for full and effective participation and inclusion of persons with disabilities, where state parties should consult with and actively involve persons with disabilities in the development and implementation phases. Therefore, the participatory approach should ensure that all reasonable accommodation needs of all participants are ensured in the planning. Visit the link provided for guidelines on disability-inclusive consultation. These are other factors that should be taken into consideration in preparing for the design and implementation of a national action plan. Sustainability. Plans should be designed to create changes in attitudes and practices that will persist in the long term, beyond the lifespan of the plan itself. Coherence. The plan should take account of other relevant policies, programs, and processes that are under development or already being implemented with the view to promoting opportunities for collaboration and resource sharing. Flexibility. The plan should be responsive to changing circumstances and should include mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and periodic review. To test your knowledge on all that we've captured so far, feel free to refer to the National Action Plan Toolkit for answers to the following. What is the purpose of a National Action Plan? Why should persons with disabilities play a role in developing a Disability National Action Plan? How would you select a disability advocate to participate actively in developing an implementation of the plan? What skills and competencies will you consider? And lastly, what can persons with disabilities do if not included in the process of developing and implementing the plan?
Part 2 has helped us to understand how preparation plays a crucial fundamental role in ensuring full and effective participation of all stakeholders. This requires not only knowing all relevant stakeholders, but importantly, ensuring accessibility of participation, sustainability of the process, coherence with existing policies, and flexibility of national action plans to respond to changing circumstances. Bearing all of this in mind, let's move to part 3, which unpacks the entire process of development and implementation of national action plans, from the preparatory phase up until the evaluation phase. Achievements of the stated goals are systematically assessed and reviewed with the aim of laying a foundation for a successor plan.
Let's look at the steps to consider in the preparatory phase. The first step of this phase is to consider obtaining formal commitment from government senior authority to provide mandate to develop a national action plan. After obtaining a formal commitment, the government should consider appointing a formally designated institution or individual who has clear political support to lead the process. An appointed designated institution or individual should ensure that there is a coordinating mechanism which is made up of government agencies and including disabled people's organizations. When coming to capacity development and national action plans, a certain level of capacity is required and a certain level of knowledge of issues surrounding disability to initiate the NAP process is required. Capacity building may therefore be necessary in the first stages of developing an NAP. Where necessary, external agencies such as the UN or civil society organizations are often able to provide such support. And when it comes to financing and budgeting of national action plans, a funding strategy should also be drafted as part of the first stages of developing an NAP. This will require an assessment of the human and financial resources required, as funding streams, whether through national budgets or international development aid, are often determined some time in advance. Forwarding planning can be critical to securing sufficient financial support. Be aware of both opportunities and challenges of integrating a national action plan into the national development framework or strategy, as well as accessing financial support through the national budget, and weigh them against assistance from an international donor. Good practices on consultation. Holding consultations with stakeholders has been used as a tool for building capacity and promoting dialogue on sensitive issues. It has acted as a confidence-building mechanism, an instrument for even conflict resolution, and an opportunity to share experiences and explore cross-cutting issues. Take note of some documented good practices on consultation, such as that of Bosnia. For example, government representatives formed a coalition with civil society members to advocate for national action plan formulation. Having advocates within the government proved useful, as they could persuade the colleagues within the government to support the development of the plan. In addition, by working together, civil society members and government representatives created linkages and relationships that have served them well in advancing other civil society goals. The development phase. During this phase, the identified coordinating mechanism should determine priorities, and these should be based on gaps that have been identified in the baseline study. After determining priorities based on the gaps of the baseline study, the coordinating committee should convene a series of consultations to generate buy-in and ensure the plan responds to issues identified in the baseline study. Then, after obtaining buy-in through a series of consultations, the identified coordinating mechanism should finalize the draft plan according to the feedback that has been received, then disseminate and launch activities through either media campaigns or national conferences. Good practices. Twinning. There has been significant interest by governments in twinning or cross-learning on national action plan development and implementation. This involves linking countries and exchanging ideas, experiences, and resources across borders. Cooperating in developing a national action plan, or twinning, has been announced between Liberia and Ireland. Twinning generally involves partnerships between resource-rich countries and resource-poor countries, and can involve the development of national action plans on very different bases. The advantage of twinning includes creating and maintaining international networks, sharing tools and resources for developing and implementing NAPs, offering opportunities to learn from other states' experiences. Now the implementation phase. The first step to consider in this phase is designation of a coordinating group to lead the action plan process and manage implementation. In addition to leading the action plan and managing implementation, the coordinating group should ensure monitoring of a detailed activity plan and report to National Coordinating Mechanism on progress thereof. While monitoring progress, the coordinating group may ensure that the National Action Plan also contains public awareness activities on the rights of persons with disabilities. It is important to note that national action plans sometimes fail. Therefore, pay attention to common attributes to these failures. Which of the following do you think can be attributed to National Action Plan failure? 1. National action plans with no financial, human, and technical resources. 2. Lack of political support. 3. Priorities that are not evidence-based on local content. 4. Unclear roles within National Action Plan coordinating mechanisms. 5. Minimal representation of civil society. And 6. Lack of accountability mechanisms. In response to the previous quiz, all of the 6 mentioned are common attributes to failures of National Action Plan. Here they are again. 1. National action plans with no financial, human, and technical resources. 2. Lack of political support. 3. Priorities that are not evidence-based on local content. 4. Unclear roles within National Action Plan coordinating mechanisms. 5. Minimal representation of civil society. And 6. Lack of accountability mechanisms. Let's move to the monitoring phase. In the monitoring phase, all national action plans should include provision for ongoing monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of the activities, ongoing monitoring of the implementation of the National Action Plan should take place at regular intervals during the implementation. And for ongoing monitoring at regular intervals, governments may establish a monitoring group which should include a representation of a diversity of disability. These are some of the documented disability best practices of countries with NAPs that focus particularly on disability. These are mentioned by the thematic area they demonstrated a best practice on in disability. Mali, on participation in decision making. Uganda, on HIV and AIDS. Tanzania, on participation of children with disabilities. Pakistan, on education. Indonesia, on disaster risk reduction. Nepal, on legal advocacy support. Australia, on disability inclusive development. Samoa, on inclusive education. Sweden, on accessibility. Serbia, on employment for youth with disabilities. Colombia, on civil society organizations advocacy. And Haiti, on inclusive education, accessibility of schools. Now the evaluation phase. Evaluations should be carried out by an independent body against the National Action Plan's targets and indicators. Can you indicate which of these should form the basis of a plan's indicators? 1. Measure the extent to which a NAP has achieved its goals and objectives. 2. Highlight both intended and unintended impacts of a national action plan. 3. Differentiate NAP's engagements with impact on men, women, children, older persons, youth, parents, and families. 4. Analyze challenges in implementation and how they were or not overcome. 5. Results should be published in accessible formats for all. 6. Findings should provide for a basis for revision and update of a national action plan. In response to the previous quiz, all of the 6 mentioned should form the basis of a national action plan's indicator and are therefore correct answers to the quiz. These are 1. Measuring the extent to which an NAP has achieved its goals and objectives. 2. Highlighting both intended and unintended impacts of a National Action Plan. 3. Differentiating NAP's engagements with impact on men, women, children, older persons, youth, parents, and families. 4. Analyzing challenges in implementation and how they were or not overcome. 5. Publishing results in accessible formats for all. 6. Findings should provide for a basis for revision and update of a National Action Plan.
It is important to note that the process outlined is not a once-off process. Post-evaluation, the findings should provide a basis for revision or updating of the National Action Plans. Governments also have the opportunity to report on these outcomes of their National Action Plans at international levels, such as the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities committees. Voluntary reporting under the UN Sustainable Development Goals also provide an important opportunity to report on achievements in the implementation of the National Action Plan. Disabled people's organizations and other stakeholders can also report through these avenues by submitting parallel reports. Please also take note that reporting on government decisions to initiate a process to develop a National Action Plan may also include a request for technical and financial support in the design and implementation of the National Action Plan. Part 4 takes us through the structure and content of a Disability National Action Plan. This may differ from country to country, as it should reflect unique circumstances, context, and situation of each country in which it is being implemented. However, the next part will show us common elements that should be considered in each National Action Plan.
The structure and content of a National Action Plan is often made up of these common elements. Statement of commitment, background and context, overarching goals, specific goals and objectives, activities, performance indicators, identification of actors responsible for each action point, time frame, linkages related to policy programs and policies, budget. The statement of commitment refers to the purpose of the plan and its relationship to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It also refers to the plan's relationship to other international commitments such as the Sustainable Development Goals. The background and context may include overview of key findings of the current situation of persons with disabilities in the country and how the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities relates to existing government policies and strategies. The plan should articulate an overall goal consistent with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, but also draw from national development plans and/or programs of action. A National Action Plan should have goals and strategic objectives that are clearly defined, achievable, and measurable. Findings and recommendations of the baseline study may inform these goals. Goals and objectives should be aligned with relevant ones in a country's national development plan. Activities are at the heart of a National Action Plan and can consist of the creation of new programs and mechanisms. They provide the detail on the measures the CRPD calls for under each article and constitute specific steps to be taken in the implementation of the plan's objectives. In order for evaluation to take place, the plan must include performance indicators, which will be most useful if they are simple and can be clearly understood by all stakeholders, especially those who will implement the activities. Ensure baseline data exists for disability disaggregated indicators to enable targeting and tracking. Identification of actors responsible for each action plan includes listing branches of all sectors of government at all levels that have an implementation responsibility, specifying mechanisms by which civil society and organizations of persons with disabilities should contribute, involving a representative of the government's team responsible for the development and monitoring of the National Development Plan. Time frames should be established for every planned activity. Time frames should be realistic and sufficient for all objectives to be met, as well as linked to national planning and budgetary cycles. Connections should be made with other relevant national policies, programs, and processes, and national strategic objectives in order to enhance policy coherence, maximize efficiency, and seize opportunities to reinforce government policy. With regards to budget, identify sources for funding, either from the fiscus as well as development partners and private sector investments. Financial and human resources are essential to launching new activities. Therefore, national action plans should set out a budget by costing human resources required, costing disability-specific budgetary requirements, as well as costing disability inclusion costs.
In conclusion, while it is advisable to look at examples of national action plans on disability from other countries, or even other types of national action plans within one's own country, templates should not be imposed or adopted without adaptation to the local context. Next up and attached is additional reading as further reference. These we trust will be useful to you, and in these are additional guidelines on preparation of national action plans, as well as other examples of existing national action plans. We trust that this interactive online module was very useful to you. Should you and your organization require to be taken through a further full workshop, you are welcome to contact UNDISA. The contact details and process to request this is also available on the supporting documents. From myself, Zuki Swanzo, I thank you so much for your time and wish you luck with your country's National Action Plan on Disability.
Here are some guidelines on the preparation of national action plans. Click on the respective link to learn more. They include the following: UNDISA Guide to the Implementation of the World Action Programme for Youth. UNDISA Making Commitments Matter, a toolkit for young people to evaluate national youth policy. OHCHR Handbook on National Human Rights Plans of Actions. OHCHR National Plans of Action for the Promotion and Protection of Human Rights. E. Flynn's From Rhetoric to Action Implementing the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Here are some examples of types of national action plans that relate to disability by country or region. Jamaica, Vision 2030 Jamaica, Persons with Disabilities Sector Plan 2009 to 2030. Czech Republic, National Plan for the Promotion of Equal Opportunities for Persons with Disabilities 2015 to 2020. Thailand, the Fourth National Plan on Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities 2012 to 2016. Australia, National Disability Strategy 2010 to 2020. Albania, National Action Plan on Persons with Disabilities 2016 to 2020. Nepal, National Policy and Plan of Action 2006 to 2016. Norway, Government's Action Plan for Equality for Persons with Disabilities 2020 to 2030. Peru, Plan for the Equalization of Opportunities for Persons with Disabilities 2009 to 2018. Council of Europe, Council of Europe Disability Action Plan 2006 to 2015. European Union, European Disability Strategy 2010 to 2030, and World Health Organization Global Disability Action Plan 2014 to 2021. Please note that to access the full training module, visit the UN website link provided. For further information on capacity development, use the following contact details and visit the link that follows. For attention to the Director at the Division for Inclusive Social Development, United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDISA, Secretariat Building, United Nations Headquarters, 25th floor, 405 East 42 Street, New York, NY 10017.